Okay, I replied. So, what's next? Are you gonna teach me that thing that you're doing? The purple blade? No, Alice replied. That's not the next step. Honestly, Asgar is a very simple base level attack that basically any mage could do. It was simply an effective tool in helping you train your magical abilities. Now that you've got defensive magic down, the complicated part starts. You see, every mage has their own unique way about them, with basically everything. If you haven't noticed, it's kind of a trend. It falls into basically everything. All mages have a unique way in which they do combat, specific magics and tactics that suit their personality and the way they like to fight. And as you probably would have guessed from our training thus far, there's really not too much more to combat than what you experienced during your basic defensive training. The only thing that you really need to add is a tactic, which anyone could do, and there is a measure of skill to it. However, if I were to try to teach you to attack the way that I attack, it would only negatively affect you in the end. You have to develop your own unique style. Use the type of magic attacks that work with you, that suit you personally. I myself fall into the range of close and mid-range attacks. So basically, I'm a close-range spellcaster, meaning I prefer to be up close and personal, as you'd say. But your combat style could be drastically different. Plus, in magic, there are basically an endless number of spells that anyone could learn. All there really is to it is to add the knowledge and skill that you gain from your defense training and mix in some combative skills, some spells meant to attack and do harm to your enemies. So really, all you need to do is hit the books and find some spells that suit you. And once you do, it's just a matter of practice, finding a way to work them into your combat style. If you didn't notice, I didn't even really give you that much direction in how to defend yourself. I simply told you to do it. I allowed you to define your own method of defense, decide your own tactics, and how best to use your abilities. So basically, the training wheels are off. From this point forward, it's going to be your own job to decide the path you take as a spellcaster, what magic you use, how they tactically fit into your own plans, and how you apply them is really all up to you. Okay, I replied to Alice. I think I get it. So Alice and I had a friendly chat as we made our way back to the clearing where Eliza would probably still be waiting for us. She had spent about 7 days reading through the index now, and with nothing but free time on her hands. I imagine she's probably made it even farther than me into the index. Well, discounting the fact that I specially asked her to focus on matters that would concern in constructing my construct abilities. Basically, her part of our little arrangement was, in exchange for letting her in on magic, her job was to learn enough to help me with my construct abilities. That's her task first and foremost. As far as learning anything else when it comes to magic, including defense and practical skills, that's up to her on her own. Until such time as she's finished helping me with my construct abilities, that's what I want her mind focused on. We finally made it back to the clearing, and as expected,
Eliza
was head deep in the magical index. She had begun to collect notebooks and bring them out here with her. She would occasionally jot notes, and I had been keeping up with her before me and Alice's training. As far as I could tell, she had already passed me in the basic knowledge, and had even started looking in to construct abilities. So I'm interested to see how far she's come. Hopefully she's far enough into it that it won't disturb her now that I'm starting to need to have access to the magical index again. Hey Eliza, I shouted to her as me and Alice approached. So, how are things going? Oh, things are going magnificently, Eliza said. You were right when you said that this was so much like engineering. The similarities are astonishing. I've already learned so much, it feels like my head might pop. But if you're wondering how far I've come on figuring out how to start putting together your construct abilities, I think you're actually going to be pleasantly surprised. Believe it or not, most of the information you need in order to set up a construct ability is easily found within the beginning of learning how to use magic. The real difficult part to it is that there are countless hundreds of different magical functionaries, like tiny little cogs in the machine that do different things. It's all simply a matter of being able to arrange them in the right way. Normally when you cast a spell, these magical cogs are temporary. They dissipate once you finish using the spell. But with a construct ability, they become set in stone, locked in place, and they never dissipate or change as time passes. Like the difference between something being made out of paper mache and solid steel. One simply lasts longer and is more durable than the other. The truly important matter when it comes to construct abilities is that they're far more complex than your average spell. Meaning, while a spell may have something numbering from 4 to even a dozen or so elements to it, construct abilities are far more complicated, requiring that you include dozens, sometimes more, elements to them. It's all a matter of what you want that construct ability to do. That is the deciding factor in not only what elements you include, but how many elements there are within that construct ability, and the complexity of its design. But it's a double-edged sword, you see. Just like any machine, the simplest machines are often the strongest, meaning if a construct ability only has a few moving parts rather than a bunch, it's far more durable and packs way more of a punch. Basically, trading off one thing for another. The simpler it is, the more powerful it is. But the more complex you make it, the more intricate the design, the more variable the uses you can get from it, and the effects. At this point, I think I have more than enough basic knowledge to give you a design for a construct ability if it suits you. The only question being what you'd want that construct ability to do. So if anything, that's the question you really need to answer, Regimen. I looked down at Eliza, scratched my head a little bit. I still wasn't sure what I wanted the construct abilities to be. I had 3 of them. Perhaps it might be best to give each one of them a simple ability in order to maximize their strength. But then again, making them more developed and complex to round out the amount of things that I could do with them might be more beneficial in my regular life rather than just as a magic caster. And even then, I still have the problem of what I actually want their effects to be. I scratch my head a little bit harder in frustration. Right now, I'm really not sure, Eliza. There are just so many options. With magic, it seems like there's an endless number of possibilities. How am I supposed to account for them all with a limited amount of knowledge about magic? It's just frustrating, really. Well, if you get an idea, let me know and I can start drawing something up. Just remember the basic tenets I told you, and that should give you at least somewhere to start at. So from that point on, for the next few days, myself, Eliza, and Alice all spent an equal amount of time looking through the magical index. Alice simply wanted to improve her magical collection, so to speak. Apparently, according to her, she already had a fairly wide range of magical spells that she could use, but having access to the magical index gave her a new array of spells to choose from. I, on the other hand, now that I had a basic grasp of how to use magic, and my abilities had increased, had the task of starting to decide what spells I needed to add to my repertoire, as to say. I needed to create a combat style on my own, and decide whether I wanted close, mid-range, or long-range attacks, or possibly a mixture of them. And adding on top of that problem, I still wanted to learn some spells that would be useful in my day-to-day life. Some things that would aid me in dealing with my troubles. For example, Beckett Sanderson. And finding a way to impress my father so that I don't end up getting cut out. But one way or another, the time that I was spending at this magical summer camp of ours was definitely paying off. I was making ground in magic, and now with the knowledge I possessed, I could start to actually do things. It was all a matter of what I decided to learn from the magical index. So, over the next few days, I managed to pick up 4 new spells. The first spell I decided to go with was something from the long-range category. A simple attack that allowed me to throw long-range projectiles to produce a pure bolt of magical energy and then throw it. It was quite effective. It managed to tear a tree down like it was no problem at all. Just for safety and in case I needed something at close range, I went ahead and picked up the same attack that Alice had, the ability to produce a blade. Surprisingly, it worked almost identical to the way that Sanctum worked, simply visualizing a blade rather than a shield, and drawing from a different source of energy. After I had managed to pick up some new attack spells, that way I could start rounding myself off in combat, I also decided that I needed to have some spells that might help me in my regular life. I decided that the month that I had spent trying to learn magic, after it was over, I needed an ability that would help me catch up, to hasten the speed at which I was able to take in information and learn. So I picked up a spell that would allow me to read at an enhanced rate, basically absorbing the knowledge right out of the book. It wouldn't work with magical books like the Magical Index, but non-magical books absorbed just fine. Also, since my father prized physical ability, I decided that the next thing that I should pick up is something that helps me enhance my physical strength and speed. I did manage to find one spell. It was a little complicated, but if used properly, it allows me to increase my physical strength in reflection to the amount of magical energy I'm able to put into it. So I can make myself stronger and measure it out so that it's not completely obvious that I'm using magic. I don't want to try to show off my strength and accidentally kill somebody, or throw them through a brick wall. That might cause people to ask questions. Slowly but surely, this month I was taking off in order to practice in the realm of magic was paying off big time. It was all working out just as I had planned it. In fact, better than I had planned it. As far as I was concerned, we were actually ahead of schedule. I asked Eliza to start tinkering with some ideas, after telling her that I actually had 3 different construct abilities, and that one of my ideas was to see if I could find some way that they could all interlock and work together. She was far from bored of it. The idea fascinated her to no end. Even as far as we could tell in the book, there had never been any attempt to force construct abilities to cooperate, to create a construct ability system, so to speak. After telling her the idea, she got lost in it. From that moment on, all of her sketchbooks became a never-ending rain of papers, all with different ideas. So that aspect was going swimmingly. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. It was about 15 days in to our month-long magical summer camp of sorts that I found myself waking up in the middle of the night. I needed to go to the bathroom. I figured while I was up, I might as well grab myself something to drink as well. After going to the bathroom, I was making my way to the kitchen when I saw my mother out in her nightgown. Oh, hello, Regiment. What are you doing out of bed? I'm sorry, Mother. I was just up. I needed to use the bathroom, and I thought I'd get myself something to drink. Well, like mother, like son, I suppose. I was doing the same, so perhaps we'll have a drink together, before going back to bed, of course. So myself and my mother went to the kitchen in order to get something to drink. As we sat there, myself drinking a glass of milk and my mother having herself a glass of wine, my mother asked me something. Reginald, how exactly is this magical training of yours going? You are making progress, aren't you? Yes, Mother, I replied. Currently, everything is going so well. In fact, beyond my expectations. Originally, I thought it might take a lot longer in order to reach the point that I'm at, but surprisingly, things have escalated quickly. My abilities to use magic have vastly improved. All of the decisions I've made up to this point are paying off in spades. Everything is working out so well I can hardly believe it. Alice's magical combat ability is far exceptional, more exceptional than I ever had expected it to be. With her training me, I was able to pick up magical defense and vice versa, pick up magical attack easily. easily, and it only took me 7 days. Since then, I've mastered a number of spells, which will not only keep me protected during combat, but also some that I think will benefit me when dealing with Father in my regular day-to-day life. Make things much simpler, and bringing in Eliza was a stroke of genius. Her natural engineering skills are combining perfectly with magical knowledge. The rate at which she was able to become competent when it comes to magical knowledge and include the knowledge of how to construct abilities is simply amazing. I couldn't have done it faster myself if I had tried. And she has a natural knack for seeing things that others don't when it comes to engineering. I have no doubt that she is going to come up with a far superior layout for the construct abilities than I could have myself. Everything. All the moves that I've made up until this point are working out splendidly. Well, that's very good, Reginald, my mother says, seeming as if she had something else on her mind. Something she wanted to say, but for whatever reason was holding back. You know, Mother, you can ask me about the magic. If there's something you want to know, I'd be happy to tell you. She got a curious look on her face for a moment. Yes, actually, I was quite curious about that. Exactly what kind of magic have you acquired thus far? How will it be of use? I looked around the room for a moment, checking to make sure that we were alone, and seeing if there was any way I could display my abilities without making a mess of things. Looking to the other side of the kitchen, I saw a shelf, and there was a very sizable cookbook on it, one that the people working here often use to prepare our food. That should be a good demonstration, I thought. I got up to my chair, slowly making my way over to the other side of the kitchen. What are you doing, Reginald? Well, you wanted to see it, right? My magic? I'm going to give you a demonstration, I said, confidently. I went to the other side of the room, grabbing the book off the shelf and walking back over to my mother, still sitting in the island on the kitchen. Hopping up onto the stool and placing the book on top of it, the island, I focused my mind on the magical cogs, the elements which made the spell work. For whatever reason, I thought it would be a bit more impressive than just saying a few magic words. After which, I raised my hand and snapped my fingers, and in a flash of red, the book lifted from the kitchen island. Streams of gentle red light wrapped around it. Suddenly the book flew open, the pages flying by in a shuffle, and slowly streams of bright red light flowed from the book to my forehead. And finally, the book slammed closed, gently lowering itself back to the kitchen island. I looked over to my mother. That's quite interesting. It appears the recipe that the cooks have been using for that beef stew that I like actually contains cinnamon. Curious, I said, looking up at my mother with a smile. What did you do, Reginald? My mother asked with a shocked expression on her face. Oh, I just read this book in its entirety. The spell I just used allows me to absorb knowledge at an accelerated rate. Basically, if the book is ordinary and not magical in any way, learning its contents is a simple matter of snapping my fingers, and it's done. It takes quite the tedium out of it. For a moment, my mother sat there aghast, her hand covering her mouth with a surprised look on her face. And then she lowered her hand, had a gentle smile on her face. That is astonishing, Reginald. And it only took you 15 days to learn that spell. I looked at my mother for a moment with a curious expression, and then I couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Reginald, why are you laughing? My mother asked. Oh, it's nothing, Mother. It's just that it didn't take me 15 days to learn that spell. In fact, I only took 1 day to learn that spell. At this point, I've actually collected 4 spells. Excuse me, 5 spells, each with its own use. I've also got 1 spell ready in order to help me deal with Father's obsession with physical strength. I believe it should do quite nicely, I said, smiling, looking up at my mother. Her smile widened. She gave me a hug. Just amazing. You have done wonderfully, Reginald. I never thought that magic could be learned with such ease. Oh, no. Perhaps it's not that magic is easy, more that my son is simply talented, as I always believed you were, Reginald. And from that point, myself and my mother spent a little time simply sitting there, talking. We had a fairly nice conversation for what seemed like the first time ever. There was no more business discussions or what was profitable, no plans for what was to be done or how to deal with my father, no discussions about magic or how it was going to be used. Me and my mother simply talked, trading stories of our lives back and forth, smiling and laughing. I have to say, I believe that takes the place of my favorite conversation that I've ever had with my mother, and I hope there are more to come.